era, new period of enforcement with reduced resources for enforcers. So I think we really need to take a cold look as to what is actually possible rather than what is idealistically hoped for. But anyway, I'm sure, Suzanne, with your experience, you'll be able to give us some kind of outlook. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm missing my slides, but
Christian, I'll do a message for him.
are they writing asking me to send again?
Well,
Susanna, did you send your presentation? Could you please send it again?
Yes, and Kristen confirmed he has them.
Oh, no. Okay. Just start with the introduction and we will bring your presentation.
Are you sure? Or should I resend them? Okay. Well, I'll start with the first slide. So I'm going to tell you about the GDPR journey in Danish cable TV. It's a Danish company and it's an affiliate of a larger company called TDC. So welcome to everyone and thank you for listening in. I know it's been a long day, so I'll try to make my presentation crystal clear. And if I don't have my slides, it might be even faster. So just to give you a little background on who I am, my name is Susanna Ahlberg. And in my previous experiences, I've worked within pharmaceuticals. So I worked with Lundbeck, a Danish company, and I also worked with a European NGO in Brussels. What these have in common is that I've been working with creating awareness at that time around diseases and patient rights, and I've moved this experience into working with GDPR and how to make sure that everyone knows about GDPR in the company. So, yeah. Sorry, I'll just resend them then.
So, har du Lenes præsentation?
Stine har heller ikke fået med.
So, Susanna, in the meantime, I will do some talking. Could you please send your presentation once again?
Will do.
Lena, I don't know if you have sent a presentation, but also please send it again. Whilst we are waiting for it, Susanna, let us do some. Let's do a Q&A session, and perhaps together with Lena and Kimi, when she arises. So. Based on if the two of you saw my presentation and finally the last slide, which was the conclusions, where the 10 issues were discussed, is there any comments that you have that you can share with us on the conclusions? Skal jeg refresh again?
Yeah. So right click so that.
So, were there any comments on the conclusions from the slide, Lena or Kimi or Susanna?
Well, I noticed one thing you said, Percy, and that is, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. And just for Christian, I sent my slides again, so you should have them. So I noticed one thing that you said, Kirsty, and that is that GDPR implementation in a lot of companies is seen as put in at a very low level. So it's not at the same level as other disciplines within law. And I think this is something that needs to mature in the companies. I can say for my own company, we prioritized it very much, as I will tell you when I show my slides. But I have a hard time seeing how you can be compliant if GDPR is not at the top level of the company in the management groups. And also considering the risk aspect, it's a lot. It's a lot you get in a fine, and it has a big impact if that hits your company.
Indeed, and we saw how active the oversight authorities have been in enforcing the GDPR in the various companies and organizations. Kimi, did you have any thoughts, or Lena? No,
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, whilst they are getting on,
Yes.
or yes, go ahead.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Kirsty, I don't know if you actually want the comments you asked for just before, or you are decided to move on.
No, just we will get some comments as we upload your presentations. There's a technical issue.
Yes, because I have also a view on what would be some of the challenges we are facing currently, and maybe also going forward. And I agree with Susanne that the engagement of top management is the continuous engagement of top management is very essential. Because at a certain point, I found a comic with a lady polishing her nails and saying GDPR is just so much last year. And this is also some of the things I struggle with, that somehow it isn't any exciting news anymore. So you really have to work as a data protection officer. You really have to struggle quite a lot to put it on top of the agenda again. The second thing I think is a challenge is also the legacy of our IT systems. I don't think a lot of businesses has really changed their substantial customer journey systems or ERP systems or any other major IT investments based on GDPR. Maybe Danske Bank is the rare case where they really invested heavily. I remember, Cassie, you once asked us to raise our hands for those companies who really made substantial IT investments based on GDPR. So we are still struggling with legacy systems where privacy by default or even privacy by design is not an integrated feature of these systems. The systems we are operating is going back to the lady who polished her nails and say, it's so much last year, and the systems we operated in is just so much 10 years ago, before GDPR was on the top of our minds. So that was a reflection of mine.
Send them emails or send them again, or send de svar på den mail. Yes, please continue with the comments, Susanne. Do you? I'm not quite sure, Lena. I agree, because I think that besides Danske Bank, also not the financial institutions, but many companies have done considerable investments in upgrading their IT systems and making sure that at least some of the key processes, critical processes, have been addressed in connection with the GDPR. Kimi,
I'm happy to hear that, Cassie. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, I think you're right, Cassie, but I also agree with Lena that there are some challenges, because as soon as you upgrade your systems, you also have to have updates that actually currently comply with the GDPR. And it has been kind of a process to have all the software developers ready, I would say. So even though we were ready to implement them, they were not really up to date, all of them. So we are still in progress, I would say. And I think a lot of companies are still struggling with it, even though they are aware that it costs a lot of money and maybe they are prepared to make these investments. I think that because there's also some challenges in how do we actually comply? Like, what is privacy by design and by default? I don't think, I've at least struggled a lot with it with our software developers. And we do not always agree. So even though we might get some new updates or some new software, it is not always 100% compliant, I would say. I still see there's some struggling. And then I very much agree with Susanna as well, that it has to come from top down to be prioritized and to make sure that there are money enough. And also now it's been 2 years and some of them are like, oh, is it still going on? When are we done with this? So I think there's a task in like preparing and still trying to make the organization understand that it's not a project anymore, but right now it's a continuous ongoing thing that we all have to be aware of all the time. So it doesn't just stop, even though it's been going on for 2 years. That's at least something I struggle with in here.
Yeah, you're true. There is no one size fits all, and there's neither just one way of implementing GDPR. But let me take another area, and this is the data subject rights. What are your views and what are your experiences as far as the data subjects is concerned? And what do you think the focus has to be in the future in order to support and protect the rights of the data subjects? Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I would say we have become quite experienced in handling data subject requests. We are receiving around 3,000 a year. So it's really an integrated business process by now. As for subject access requests,
can you hear me? Did you have any comments on the rights of the data subjects and the future? How companies should? Is there a problem, and how it has to be addressed?